Okay, folks, so what I want to talk today about is goal setting. It's goal setting, and I'm calling this Nine Things That Successful People Do Differently, which is based on a book by Dr. Heidi Grant Halverson. She doesn't necessarily refer to it as goal setting, but that's really what it is. And it's a process to allow you to achieve your goals in a fast changing world. And I know there are people here who've done goal setting before, maybe even taught goal setting, but you know the world has changed and the way some of the rules that we used to use for goal setting are no longer relevant. So it's based on this book by Dr. Heidi Grant Halverson, which is, as I said, Nine Things Successful People Do Differently. In fact, she's written two books. I really like both of them. The second one, which actually may have been the first one published, is called Succeed. And these books are related. The book Succeed is a bigger book, and it goes into these nine things in much more detail. So I like that because I like the academic rigor behind it. But the Nine Things Successful People Do Differently is a very simple read. It'll take you less than an hour to read. And it basically summarizes the nine things that I'm going to talk about today, which is all about goal setting in the 21st century, even though she doesn't call it that. Many of you will have seen my idea around productivity, and this is going to be step two of this four-step process. So I like to pick a 12-month theme and revise it every 3 months. And then within that, set 90-day goals, which is what we're going to focus on today. And then once you've got your 90-day goals, which is like 12 weeks, you can then break that down into 12 weeks and decide what you're going to do in each 40-hour week. And then on a day-to-day basis, do your to-dos. So today is very much focused on this second step here, which is the 90-day goal. So the 9 things successful people do differently applies to everything, but we're going to focus today on a 90-day goal. And some of the things that you may have heard about goal setting don't apply so much anymore. So you may have heard people say, stay positive, only focus forward, just do your best, and things will happen. Make a plan, and this is true, but making a plan alone is not enough because things are going to change even in 90 days. And of course, the famous the book The Secret, which says just imagine it and everything will happen for you. Okay, so I'm not saying this is completely bad advice and you throw it out. It's just that it's inadequate. It's not enough anymore. So let me give you the summary of the 9 things successful people do differently, and then we'll break them down and go through them one at a time. And I'm going to ask you to do it on one of the goals that you've got in mind that you want to work on. You don't have to share it now, but it'd be a good idea to start thinking about which goal you're going to apply it to. So I've broken it down. If you're reading the book, then Dr. Grant Halverson doesn't put them in a specific order, but I've grouped them into this order here, which I've called Ready, Aim, and Fire, simply because I think it's easier to understand in this sequence. So in the Ready is actually setting a goal. So the three things we'll look at are being specific about a goal, knowing what you will do and what you will achieve rather than what you won't, and then what Dr. Grant Halverson calls be a realistic optimist. Aim is what you're doing as you go. So all of this we're going to do now. We're going to plan for now, but what we're planning for is what's going to happen over the next 90 days while you're trying to achieve your goal, because life gets in the way. And fire is what can go wrong and how you make sure that things don't derail you from your goals. Okay, so I see some other people who've just joined now. So Shelley and Trisha as well. What I'm going to do is turn your microphones on, but ask you please to mute it at your end because we've got a small group and I know that we're not going to have people talking over each other. So I'm going to turn everyone's microphones on and allow you to mute it at your end so that you can then selectively turn it off again. Turn it on again whenever you want to speak. Okay, so I think everyone's muted their microphones. Almost everyone. Okay, let's continue. So what I'd like you to do is choose one goal for now. And it may be a personal goal, it may be a professional goal. And if you like, you can choose 2 goals if you want to. If you want to choose one in each area, you can do that. I suggest if you're watching this webinar live and you're here live, then just choose one and track through it and then go back and watch the webinar recording later with one of your other goals. There's also some other resources in the eGurus Vault about how to do this. For example, there's an ebook about this so that if you prefer to just read and have that by your side while you're working through your goals, then that's available as well. Okay, so let's do this live. I'm going to run this as kind of like a coaching webinar, so you'll get the chance to work on a goal in the background. I'm not going to force anyone to share anything. However, as we go along the way, I'll ask you whether you would like to share. And if you'd like to share, you can do it in two ways. As you know, you can type it in the question box, or you can unmute your microphone and just share it out loud. Very happy to do that, and it might actually help other people if you're sharing. But again, don't feel that you have to. So if I don't see anyone sharing or I don't hear anyone sharing, that's okay. I'm just going to proceed. Okay, so let's break this down into these three areas. So the first three things we're going to look at are what I call ready, and this is about setting your goals. So this is initially deciding what your goal is going to be. So you probably got some idea at the moment what goal you're working on, but let's look at these three things. Okay, so if I asked you, of these four quadrants, if you look at a goal that's vague or specific, and somewhere along that spectrum, and you've got a goal that's easy to achieve and difficult, which do you think are the best goals, the ones that are most likely to succeed? Just curious if you just put in the question box which ones you think are of those four quadrants. So you can say difficult plus specific, difficult plus vague, easy plus vague, or easy plus specific. Which of those do you think is the most likely to succeed? Okay, so someone says difficult plus specific, easy plus specific, difficult plus specific. Okay, and the answer is actually this one here in the top right corner, difficult plus specific. Let me briefly explain why. Because if you've got difficult, vague goals, so I'm going to be a superstar, then you're going to give up easily because you just never know when you're going to achieve it, and it's way out of reach. If you've got vague goals but they're easy, then it's easy to also fool yourself to think you've achieved it. So if you say, I'm going to do better in my business this year, that's a vague goal, but it's very easy to achieve because you can earn an extra dollar, or you could have an extra client, and you've achieved it. If you make it specific but easy, this is good, but it's a bit of a boring goal, and it's not really going to motivate you. So the ones that are most specific, the ones that are most motivational are goals that are difficult or challenging and specific. So for example, I've set myself a goal of a number of keynote presentations this year, and I've chosen a challenging number. So it's very specific because I've got a number attached to it, but it's also what I think is a little bit out of my reach, and I don't exactly know how I'm going to get there. So it's a little bit challenging. So it's specific but challenging, and that's going to keep me motivated towards it. So make sure that when you set your goal, be specific. And the question to answer is, or the way to know whether it's specific is, at the end of the 3 months, at the end of the 90 days, will you be able to say to yourself, I know whether I've achieved it or not? So if you say, I'm going to do more conference speaking in the next 3 months, then yeah, look, that's too easy. What you really want to say is, I'm going to have 10 more presentations, or 10 new clients, or 500 new LinkedIn connections, or 3 new clients as a result of my LinkedIn marketing. Okay, so how will you know? And that's a key. And also, one of the things to make it more motivational is to write down outcomes for your goal. So write down 2 positive outcomes as a result of you having achieved that goal, because that will help keep you motivated towards it. Okay, I'm going to keep going, and then at the end of each set of 3, I'm going to stop and ask for questions, sharing, comments, whatever you like to share. Okay, so the next one I'll lead into by talking about an experiment that Dr. Grant Halvorsen herself and some of her colleagues did, where they got students to solve puzzles. And they had 2 groups of students. And what they did was, they were both solving the same puzzles, and one of them was told at the start, we'll pay you $4 for completing this exercise, just for doing the work, and if you get above 70%, we'll give you an extra $1. The second group was told, we'll pay you $5 for doing the exercise, but if you get below 70%, then you're penalized $1. Okay, now if you do the maths, you see that everyone's getting exactly the same incentive there. So they get $4 if it's 70%, up to 70%, and $5 if it's more than 70%. Now, which group do you think did better? In fact, partway through the experiment, they stopped everyone and went to them individually and had a look at what they were, their papers that they were doing, and said, oh, look, you're doing really well. You're well on track to get the full $5. So which group do you think did better, Group 1 or Group 2? This is a bit of a hypothetical question, although I see some people are answering already. Graham has in fact got the right answer. It was group one. The people who are motivated by the reward rather than the penalty did better. In fact, this second group, when they were told, oh, you're doing really well, you're well on track, they suddenly became more stressed and anxious and nervous because there was a possibility, an even greater possibility that they might lose that extra dollar. So the principle is focus on what you will do, not on what you won't do. And it particularly applies if you're trying to, if your goal is to reduce something or eliminate something. So if you want to stop smoking or stop eating chocolate or something like that, then focus on what will you do instead, and make your goals relevant to the positive rather than the negative. And if you're trying to break something like a habit, then just be aware and put into your planning what will trigger the old habit so that you can eliminate those sort of possibilities, like buying chocolate and having it in the fridge, for me, is something that is going to trigger the old habit of eating too much chocolate. So you have to be careful not to put yourself in those situations where the old habit automatically kicks in. So it may not be chocolate, it may be that you have automatically check social media on your phone every time it beeps. So you may have to do things like turn off notifications or turn off the app or something like that. Okay, so if you're trying to eliminate something, then ask yourself, what will you do instead? And that leads into the third one in this set, and that is talking about being a realistic optimist. So again, let me tell you about some research that was done where they looked at a group of women who were starting a fitness program, a health and fitness exercise program. And this was a real program, and they surveyed them beforehand, and they asked them a series of questions. And one of the questions was, do you think that you will succeed or not? And some said, yep, I believe I'll succeed. And some said, no, I don't think I'll succeed. One of the other questions they asked was, do you think it'll be easy or do you think it'll be difficult? And again, some said, yep, I think it'll be easy. And some said it will be difficult. So I'm going to ask you, and again, I'll make this hypothetical, or you can answer in the question box if you want to. There's two questions here. So which of the people do you think was more successful at the end of the program and actually achieved their goals? So question one, the ones who said they did believe, or the ones who didn't. And question two, the ones who said it would be easy, or the ones who said it would be difficult. Okay, again, I'm happy for you to just answer that for yourself if you like, but please feel free to share in the question box if you want to. Okay, and Graham got this right. Did believe and was difficult. Exactly right. So the people who believed that they would succeed, but also believed that it wouldn't be a walk in the park or a piece of cake, and ironically speaking. Okay, so they were the ones who actually said, yep, I can do it, but also that there'll be challenges along the way. And so the principle here is to be a realistic optimist. So it's very easy to wake up on New Year's Day and set some resolutions for the year, being really optimistic about it, but most New Year's resolutions, research shows, are dead by the middle of January. So people don't think about what could get in the way. So figure out for yourself what could get in the way. And we're only thinking about 3 months here, 90 days. What could get in the way of your goals? And then what are you going to do about it? And if there are things that you've been working on for a long time, and there's a goal that you've constantly tried to achieve but haven't been able to, think about other things that you've overcome in the past and what resources that you actually have that you can now apply to this goal. Okay, so that's the third principle. It's a really important one. I've heard Dr. Grant Halverson speak on a number of podcasts and interviews, and seen some of her presentations. And this is one that she says is crucial. There's a couple of others later on which I'll also highlight for you. So be optimistic, absolutely, but also be realistic. So for example, one of my goals to get more conference presentations is that I know that there are things that are going to get in the way, like clashes between dates, or the fact that people are still on holidays in January, and so I can't go out and prospect for most of January or for most of December. Okay, so those are the first three. So the first three things are, when you set your goal, be specific about it, make it positive oriented, and figure out what could get in the way. Okay, so any questions, comments? Does anyone want to share, even sharing experiences? You're welcome to do that. And remember that you can, if you want to, do it out loud. So I'm recording this, and the recording will be made available in the eGurus Vault. So just be careful if you want to keep anything confidential, but otherwise, please feel free to share. Okay, you don't have to raise your hand. If you want to turn your microphone on, if you want to speak, just turn your microphone on and speak. And if you don't, as I said, you don't need to do that. Okay, I'm going to continue. Great. Okay, so no questions or comments or anything anyone wants to share, which is fine. I don't need that, but I don't want to give you the opportunity to do that as well. Okay, so let's look at the next set. So the next set is you've got your goal. Now let's plan for actually making it happen. So this next set of 3 is about the progress towards the goal, and the last set of 3 is avoiding obstacles along the way. Okay, so let's look at this next 3, which is about called seize the moment, know what's left, and focus on getting better, not just being good. All right, so let me tell you about another research study that was done. This was done in the US over the Christmas break. And you know, university students don't have such a long Christmas break in the US because it's winter over there. And what they did was they were going off for their Christmas break, and the lecturer said to a group of students, if you'd like to get extra credit for this course, then I'd like you to write an essay about what you did over your vacation and email it back to me 2 days before Christmas. So they actually had to do the work while they were on holidays and send it back to them. So all the students were given those instructions, except that, again, there were 2 groups of students, and one was given exactly that. The second group was given those instructions, plus they were also told, also think now about when you're going to work on this essay. Okay, so they just had to think about it. They didn't have to commit to a date. They didn't have to put in their diary. They didn't have to tell their lecturer. All they had to do was think about it. And yet they found that the people who thought about when they were going to do their work were more than twice as likely, so like 30% to 70%, more than twice as likely to actually hand in the essay. Okay, and what the researchers call this, or what Dr. Grant Halverson calls this, is seizing the moment. So figuring out when and where are you going to work on your goals. So the research shows that the people who plan and schedule time in their calendars and diaries for working on their goals are more likely to achieve them. Now, you might go, well, that's pretty obvious. That just makes sense. And yet, if you think about most people's calendars and diaries, they're full of appointments, meetings, schedules, interactions with other people. So in other words, most people's calendars are full of other people's goals, not yours. So treat your goals with as much respect as you treat interactions with other people. So plan in your diary and your calendar when and where you're going to work on your goals. I know that one of the other eGurus members, Anne Rolfe, has shared publicly that she does this. She puts time in a calendar for her own stuff rather than just hoping that her own stuff can fit in around all the other meetings and appointments that she has. Okay, so this is something to plan for the next 90 days. When and where are you going to work on your goals? Also, think about what could get in the way, because you want to make sure that your planning is realistic. But the key is to be realistic and also respectful of your own goals as much as you would be respectful of somebody else's time if you set aside time for, say, a meeting with them. Now, this is one of the other things that Dr. Grant Halverson said is one of the most effective tools around this idea of seizing the moment is what she calls if-then thinking. So if-then thinking means that you create rules for yourself. So rather than being disciplined or focused or trying really hard or striving to achieve, what you do is you create some simple rules for yourself that you follow. Because the nice thing about rules is that you just follow them automatically. When I'm driving and I come up to a stop sign, I stop. That's the rule. I don't have to think about, am I going to stop or not? Am I going to look around when there's traffic? No. The rule is you come up to a stop sign, you stop. In fact, I've just been teaching my partner, Nikki's 16-year-old daughter, how to drive. And we had this one driving lesson with a qualified instructor who actually helps not only the learner, but also helps the supervising driver, which in this case is Nikki and myself. And one of the things she says is, like when you come up to a stop sign, don't look left and right before you stop. You just turn up there and you stop. Because if you're looking, it means that you're thinking about whether it's safe to go or not. And she said, no, you make 2 decisions. You stop and then you look left and right to make a decision whether to proceed again. And I thought that's really great because it's a nice, simple rule. So here's some other examples of if-then thinking that you can use for your goal setting. If it's Monday morning, I'll write the weekly report, or I'll write my blog article for the week. When I wake up, I'll go to the gym. When I get back from lunch, I'll spend 30 minutes writing. This is a goal that I had for myself when I was writing my most recent book, The Future of Leadership. I just said, look, first thing, when I get back from lunch, whatever else is on, I'm going to spend 30 minutes writing. When I go shopping, I'll start with the fruit and veg aisle. So you fill up your shopping basket with that, shopping trolley with that first before you go to some of the other stuff. So what if-then thinking can you insert into your life, into your routine? I'll give you a couple of other examples. Matt Church has a rule that says do one thing significant before 8 a.m. each day. So one work thing. Somebody else has a rule that says it was something like writing a blog article or something like that before I have my first cup of coffee for the day. So the coffee is a reward. So it's like when I wake up, I'll do this, and then I can have a coffee as a reward. Okay, so what if-then thinking are you going to insert related to your goal? So make sure it's related to your goal. Okay, so again, I'll ask you to share things later. So we'll get to the once we finish this second set. Okay, so the next one, let me tell you about another study that was done. Again, this is a study that was done looking at people who were asked to do some stuff. So they were asked to do a series of exercises, puzzles, and partway through they were stopped and they were looked at and they were told about their progress. And some people were told, you've got 52% yet to go. And some other people were told, yeah, you're 48% done. Okay, now again, if you do the maths, you can see they're actually exactly the same. So they were almost halfway there in both cases. But one group was told, you've got some stuff to go, and the other group was told, this is how much you've done so far. So which group do you think was more motivated to complete and finish the study? The way it worked was that you could do the exercises, and the exercises were really difficult. So at some point you had to give up. So which ones do you think actually did further and did more? The ones who were told there's 48% done, or the ones who were told there's 52% yet to go? Okay, so the answer, which I think Tricia has got, is the people who were told there's 52% yet to do. Okay, now the exact numbers aren't important, although I'll explain there's a little bit of a subtlety to this. The people who were told how much was yet to be done were more motivated to keep going than the ones who were told how much they've done so far. So the principle is know what you've got left, not just what you've done so far. Now, the caveat to that is when you're starting, especially if you've got a challenging goal, it's really nice to measure your progress along the way. It's really nice to know that you are making progress, and we'll get to that in the next point. But as you're going, you want to see the finish line, and you want to know how close you are to the finish line. So make sure you're measuring your goals as you go. So, for example, my goal of X number of conference presentations in the next 90 days, so X number of bookings, I'm going to be counting down so that I know how close I am. And the nice thing about a 90-day goal is that you can look ahead and you can pretty much see the finish line almost from the start. Okay, so know what you're going to measure and when, and how you're going to remind yourself to measure these things and to track progress. It may be very simple. It may be just as simple as you've got a bulletin board up on the wall. So I'm going to get one of those magnetic boards where I'm going to track my 3 main goals for this time, and I can count them down. So what are you going to do that will allow you to remind yourself? It may be electronic and digital. It may be analog and physical. Okay, the next one. Okay, some salespeople were surveyed about their goals. And these are people who are going to new territory or facing new market competition. And they were split into 2 groups. Sorry, they weren't split into 2 groups. They were surveyed and they were asked what their goals were, and they were given different options. And one group, so some of the salespeople said this: my goal is to achieve my targets, and some of the other salespeople said this: my goal is to learn to be better at selling. This is part of a longer survey, but if you just look at that question in isolation, what's your goal? Which group do you think was more likely to achieve their quotas or targets or budgets at the end of the quarter or the end of the year? The ones who said learn to be better or achieve my targets. Yeah, okay, and everyone's saying learn to be better, which is exactly right. So the people who said my goal is learn to be better, especially when it's a challenging goal, like going into new territory or facing new competition or selling a new product, they were the ones who are more likely to achieve their goals. And I've found this with, so let me tell you the principle. So the principle is focus on getting better, not just being good. And I found this with my 12-year-old nephew, Riley, he loves cricket and he wants to play cricket for Australia someday. And he's getting some really good cricket coaching now from a world-class cricket coach who's based here in Perth. And I know that when he goes to bat in the nets and he's being coached, his coach isn't saying, okay, Riley, you need to do this so that you can play for Australia, so you can get your baggy green. He's not saying that. What he's saying to Riley is, okay, hit the next ball. This is the way to do it. Angle of your bat, get low down in the crease, all those sort of things which are focusing on getting better, because playing for Australia is too far off in the future for it to be meaningful and realistic. So especially if you've got a challenging goal, and even if it's just 90 days and not like 10 years in the future, still focus on getting better, not just being good. So that means measuring progress along the way. So it may be something like, for example, for me, for getting so many confirmed bookings in the next 90 days, what I'll be measuring is the number of phone calls, meetings, and appointments that I have along the way, and focusing on getting better at that. So how can I turn an initial inquiry into an appointment rather than converting it into a booking? If you're doing something with social media, so I know there's some people who are working on getting some clients from LinkedIn. It may not be, so what you're working on, your progress may not be the number of clients that you get, but it's about, I'm making more LinkedIn connections this week, or I've written an article and I'm getting more likes on it or comments on it. So that might be how you're measuring progress rather than necessarily the final outcome. So as you're going, measure progress, but as I said, keep your eye on the finish line as well. Okay, and also consider whether you can reward your progress along the way. Maybe there are little things that you can do that say, yep, I've achieved it, so I'm going to reward it. And that's just positive reinforcement. And I think we all kind of know that, but it is one of the things that you'd be pleased to know that the research supports that as well. Okay, so there's the second set. So this is planning for achieving your goal. As I said, seize the moment, and especially with if-then thinking. Know what's left. So know what's left, not just what you've done so far, and focus on getting better and measuring your progress, not just on being good. Okay, any questions, comments, anything anyone wants to share about that? Okay, I'm giving you the chance to comment, or as I said, if you want to speak, then turn your microphone on and just speak out loud. Otherwise, I'm happy to continue. Okay, let me continue. So the last three, what I call fire, which is what happens when there's a fire, if you like. So how do you overcome obstacles and just challenges that come along the way? And a nice thing about, again, setting 90-day goals is that you can kind of predict some of the things that are going to happen. However, being able to predict them doesn't necessarily mean that it automatically means that you're going to overcome them. So let's look at these three things here. So here's a question I'm kind of asking tongue-in-cheek. Why are Asian children smarter? And smarter in this case is specifically related to academic excellence. And I know that SMART is much greater than just academic achievement and academic excellence, but this was a research study that was done in American high schools where the researchers noticed that children from Asian backgrounds often did better in school than the other kids in the class. And you know that's true in Australia and other countries as well. And so they were wondering why that was. And these are kids, so they figured that it must have something to do with their parents and their family background. So they asked the kids, the American parents and the Asian parents, when your kid didn't do well at school at a test, can you tell me why? What was the reason that they didn't do well at a test? So these were the top four things that the American parents said. They weren't smart enough, they didn't have good teachers, they were unlucky, or they didn't try hard enough. When they asked the Asian parents why their kids didn't do well at school, these were their top four answers. They didn't try hard enough, They didn't try hard enough. They didn't try hard enough. They didn't try hard enough. And look, coming from an Asian background, I know that was true in our family as well. It was just like, okay, you didn't do well, just try harder. Try harder and you'll succeed. And it's really nice, and my parents will be really pleased to know that the research now supports this. So having grit is very, very important. So grit or persistence or determination or resilience is one of the key indicators of to whether you're actually going to achieve your goals. So in the next 90 days, when will you need to be strong? So what's going to happen that might take you off track? So I know, for example, I've got a very important goal to get these conference bookings for more keynote presentations, but I also know that I've got another as important project that's going to take up a lot of my time during that next 90 days. So I know that I'm going to need to be strong at particular times during that next 90 days when I'm going to be working on both of them at the same time. I have to be focused, I have to be determined, I have to really be careful about scheduling my time and managing my energy as well. Okay, I can see a comment here from Gat, who says, to quote a friend of mine, give them a generation or two and they'll be as slovenly and lazy as the rest of us. And I think there's some truth to that, Gat. So when are you going to need to be strong? And is there something that's stopping you from getting there? And again, this is particularly applicable to goals that you may have worked on for a long time and you consistently fail at them, or if you like, find ways of not achieving them. Okay, so is there some underlying belief that has stopped you in the past that may not be true, or may not be true anymore, and that isn't going to stop you this time? Okay, the next one is don't tempt fate. So how can you stay away from temptation? So I've alluded to already that chocolate is one of my temptations. So I know that if I have chocolate around, it all gets eaten up, regardless of how strong-willed I like to be. And I know that other people like Nikki and her kids, they don't have that problem at all. They can have a box of chocolates, open it, eat one, and it can be sitting around for weeks, not getting eaten, except whenever they feel like it. It's the same with me. It's just that when I feel like it is right now. So how do you avoid temptation? What sort of things can you do? So there are a number of strategies that you can that you can use to avoid temptation. And of course, remember, this doesn't apply only to things like chocolate. It could be that temptation is social media. Temptation might be taking a long lunch. A temptation might be sleeping in and not starting work early as you promised yourself to do because you want to get this writing done. So whatever the temptation is, what can you do? So there's some strategies. One which is very common is to just go cold turkey. So you don't just go, I can make do with one Lindt ball. You just go, no chocolate at all. So that could be one option. It could be saying that, so if you're going to go cold turkey, it might be rather than saying I'm only going to use Facebook on my phone a couple of times during the day, it might be saying, no, I'm just going to delete the Facebook app and not use it at all. So that's one option. Another thing you can do is create a penalty. I know this is true for one of my clients. She had a goal that she was working towards, and what she did as a motivator for her was that at the start of the program, she said to me, "Look, I'm going to give you." I'm going to give you a check for $1,000. Now, the check wasn't made out to me. The check was made out to her ex-husband. And the penalty for her was that if she didn't achieve that goal, I had to mail that check to him at the end of that period, which was like a month or a couple of months. So she created a penalty for herself in order to achieve her goal. So she achieved something so she said something that she didn't want to have to do. So maybe you need to create a penalty if you don't achieve your goal, or if you don't achieve some of the milestones along the way or the tasks that you've set for yourself. The other thing you can do is just make it harder to get into those tempting situations. So the chocolate one's easy. Like, just don't have chocolate around. So that means that I won't overindulge on chocolate. So it's similar to cold turkey, except that you don't have to go all the way. You just make it harder. So what can you do to make it harder to get into temptation? Okay, and the last one is related to that. So let me tell you about another research study that was done. As you know, I like research that's done. I like chocolate, so I like research that's to do with chocolate. And this is another one of those research studies. So what happened here was that there were again two groups of subjects in this research, and they were asked to solve a series of puzzles. And before they were asked to solve the puzzles, they had to fill out a long survey, just demographic information, age, sex, where they came from, some of their preferences and so on. And it was all really easy to do, but it's long and boring. And what they did was they put the groups into two different rooms. So in one room, while they were filling out the survey, there was a bowl of chocolates on the table. And they were told, oh, please don't touch that. That's for somebody later on, another group coming in later on. In the second room, they were filling out the same survey, and again, there was a bowl of chocolates on the table. Oh, and in the first room, there was a bowl of radishes as well. And they were told, oh, if you feel peckish, help yourself to a radish. Now, in the second room, they exactly the same situation without the radishes, but with the chocolates, and they were told, if you feel a bit peckish, help yourself to chocolate. Okay, and then after they all filled out the survey, they were all taken in to do these puzzles. And the puzzles were difficult. Some of them were impossible. So the idea was that eventually people would have to give up. And what they were testing was how long would it take for people to give up. And what they discovered was quite interesting. What they found was that people who had to resist temptation or had to use willpower in the first room, in other words, they couldn't eat the chocolates, they gave up faster. It's like they used up all their willpower muscle in the first room and they didn't have enough willpower to do the task that they were really set out to do, which is solving the puzzles. So what research has found now is that willpower is like your other muscles. So two things. So one is it tires out, and the second is that you can build it up by just exercising it. So how can you exercise your willpower muscle? So the two things here. So first of all, make sure that you don't tire it out. So build in rest and rewards for your willpower, but also make sure that you might be able to build it up by exercising it. So even in unrelated areas. So the researchers found that if you did small willpower tasks, that would just help build up your willpower little by little, then it actually helps you with your willpower when you're working towards your goals as well. But also, don't try to do too much at the same time. In fact, what they recommend is to only work on one big goal at a time rather than many of them. So it's the idea of if you chase many horses, you don't catch any of them. The research supports that. And so don't try and work on too much at the same time. And I used to do this. I used to say, I've got 10 to 12 goals for the year. Now I go, no, I've got 4 to 5 goals for the year, and I'm only going to work on one every 3 months, and one big goal every 3 months. Okay, so that's the last set of 3. So have grit as you go, don't tempt fate, and build willpower. Okay, so this is the last chance. If there's anything that you'd like to, what are you going to do? What are you going to take away that you found useful from today's webinar? Actually, I'll put that other slide back so you can see the whole set. Or if there's anything you'd like to share, then please feel free to share it. As I said, I'm quite happy if you want to keep it to yourself and keep it confidential because these are your goals. But I hope you found this useful. And if you found something that you found particularly useful, please share it in the question box and I'll keep it anonymous. Yeah, measuring progress along the way. Great. Seize the moment. Yep, great. And if you can do seize the moment, then thinking is really powerful for that. Set bigger goals. Okay, let me read this one out. Schedule both planning. Schedule both planning and review time and scheduling time to do things related to the goals. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one for me as well, to be committed to put my own time into my calendar as well. One big goal every 90 days. Fantastic. Good, I can hear typing in the background, so I'm gonna wait until that person's typed. Find ways to use these ideas to help my clients. Okay, this is great as well. I'd love you if you want to use this this process to help your clients as well. Fantastic. Everything I do for eGurus, I always have in mind that you might be able to use this for your clients as well. So please feel free to steal these ideas or to borrow from them as much as you want to. Okay, and in fact, Gareth says, "Can you put the slide of the book up again?" I didn't write it down exactly. It's exactly the next slide that I was going to do, Gareth. So thank you for that. It's exactly that. So 9 things successful people do differently. Highly recommend you get it. I'm not even sure if it's available in print. It's a little book, so it may only be available in ebook form. But I think you'll find it really valuable. It just goes through those things in more detail. Also, in the eGurus Vault, there's a couple of other. It's available in a couple of other formats as well. For example, if you like the audio version, it's available for you there as well. Yeah, and someone here says, okay, so there's a team goal setting meeting on Thursday, so we'll use the recording. Yeah, great. Thank you for that. As I said, I'll keep this anonymous, but also just a reminder that if you want to use this within your organization as an eGurus member, feel free to share this recording with other people within your team as well. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for coming to the first eGurus webinar of the month, of the year. We will have more every month.